Hi and welcome to my presentation on virtual financial crime. This is a really interesting and innovative topic which covers a multitude of different subjects from law, sociology, history and economics, to name but a few. I hope you find the following useful, but feel free to email me any questions that you might have during the presentation. The aims of the presentation are to talk about what is virtual financial crime. There's still a bifurcation of opinion as to what is virtual financial crime and whether it is a real and feasible crime. This will lead us on to our second topic, that being to discuss whether crimes can occur within virtual worlds and to look at hard and soft crimes as per Brenner 2008. We shall then move on to consider the problems of law in virtual worlds, for example, transferring of real-world laws into virtual worlds, problems of terminology and getting the definitions of crime correct for legal application, and whether virtual worlds can have real-world laws without adaptation. The presentation will conclude with a few named examples of virtual financial crimes, but this is outside the scope of the presentation. I shall leave this as a brief overview. So, a few questions for you to consider. Do crimes occur in virtual worlds? Do crimes occur on social networking sites? And if so, what types of crimes occur? The majority of people will say no to the first question, yes to the second, and will pick up on cyberbullying and stalking as the main crime that occurs on social networking sites. But there are a lot more crimes that occur, such as financial crime, fraud, money laundering, illegal gambling, to name but a few. So let's start by defining what is virtual and what is cyber financial crime. There is a difference. Cybercrime is any criminal activity having taken place via the internet, smartphone or other electronic means. Virtual financial crime is where financial crimes such as fraud, money laundering, scams, etc. take place on the internet in virtual worlds. However, virtual financial crime is part of the cybercrime umbrella and can be considered so when you're considering law. There is a difference though. Cyberspace is the internet which people use as a tool for real-world functionality. Virtual worlds are where people inhabit areas of cyberspace. In other words, they colonise areas where they can live part of their real life within a virtual world. And this difference makes the application of law even more important to distinguish. Norton in 2011 published a shocking report on the growth and impact of cybercrime. Cybercrime is now a recognised part of crime. Virtual world crime is not. This slide shows some of the statistics of cybercrime. The majority of the reports on cybercrime do not take into account the vast increase in virtual world financial crime that occurs, mainly because of the lack of acceptance, but also because of the lack of appropriate terminology, which we will come on to soon. But the British Fraud Advisory Panel says there is nothing virtual about online crime. It is all too real. It is time the government took this seriously. And this taking the crime seriously is really important, especially with virtual world financial crime. There are two types of virtual money: identified virtual money and anonymous virtual money. Identified virtual money is able to be identified as belonging to someone and that it was withdrawn from a banking institution. In other words, it's traceable. Anonymous virtual world money, or what is known as virtual cash, is untraceable. Once it is withdrawn, it leaves no discernible trace. So why is there virtual money in the first place? Virtual money was created along with the advancements of technology to create faster and more convenient ways of transferring money through commerce. In other words, it is the development in the industrial world to do business. The internet has now become a massive part of global commerce, and where there is a means of conducting a criminal act, a criminal will exploit it, and the internet is of no exception. The British Fraud Advisory Panel again describes virtual money laundering as where a fraudster converts the proceeds of illegal activity into online currency, which is then used to purchase goods and/or services from you before being exchanged into real-world currencies. This slide demonstrates how virtual money can be laundered within any virtual world. There are 3 stages to laundering money from illegal gains: placing, layering, integration, and this circle shows how money enters virtual worlds and becomes integrated, layering, and then you can get the money out, and it appears to be from a legitimate place and therefore clean. There are a lot of problems with virtual money laundering, such as anonymity, lack of a joined up modern response, and jurisdiction. Who takes responsibility? Where is the problem of sovereignty? There is a lack of joined up international law on cybercrime and virtual financial crime. The main pieces of legislation is the European Convention on Cybercrime in 2001, which has signatories from outside Europe to guide domestic legislation. The other main piece of law is the Commonwealth Model Law on Cybercrime, which is largely derived from the Convention. Each of these pieces of law are a very good starting point for any country in guiding their domestic laws, but they do not mention virtual worlds, social networking or gameplay, and as the judiciary and law enforcement agencies are already struggling with the technical aspects of cybercrime, this is not helpful in the prevention of virtual world financial crime. So, a few more questions for you to think about. If you in the real world physically assault someone and the other person is physically harmed, is there a crime? If you in the real world harass someone by phoning them 30 times a day and they are psychologically harmed, is this a crime? What happens if these crimes occur in the virtual world? Is this a crime? What effect does it have on the person? What if you steal money? Have a think about these questions and consider the 3rd point down. What happens if these occur in the virtual world? To help you do this, let's move on to consider the questions against the legal background of what constitutes a crime. So in law, a crime is the legal phenomenon of a crime requires the coalescence of 4 distinct elements: actus reus, i.e. the overt act, the mens rea, blameworthy mental state, causation, and harm. If you have all of these elements together, then it is a crime, whether it is in a virtual world or the internet or the real world. A crime occurs if all of these 4 elements occur. Brenner, who is the main academic in this area, looks at the difference between hard and soft harms. Now, hard harms are the bedrock of criminal law, so murder, rape, things that are very heinously serious against society. She also looks at soft harms, the intangible harms such as psychological harms. Many of her argument is based on that forms of virtual world crimes are soft harms because they have a psychological effect. There is that lack of physicality between the crime. There are many things that can be argued against this, and we'll come on to this now. Although Brenner, as I said, is the main academic who discussed law in a virtual world, I disagree with her choice of terminology. She describes the body of law which should regulate the virtual world as fantasy crime and fantasy law. I think this is unhelpful because of the linguistic implications. Fantasy is more akin to unrealistic occurrences, whereas virtual worlds are very real and tangible places where many real-world activities can take place. The term fantasy crime also portrays that there is no harm felt in the real world. Brenner says that with cybercrime, harm is felt in the real world, and as such there should be a distinction. There are several issues here, but the main one being that, as per Barlow and She, the number 1 rule that you should remember when interacting on the internet, cyberspace or virtual world is that there is a human being behind every avatar, and therefore you should treat the avatar as you would a human being. Other issues I mentioned previously, such as terminology, but there is also the problem of transference. There is an argument that you can't transfer a real-world law into a virtual world setting because they do not fit. If you look at the linguistic interpretation of some laws, whether it is a case law, i.e. common law, or statute law, rules do not fit. However, in examples of fraud, this can be directly applied because of the wording of the statute. So you have to take consideration of the linguistic interpretation and wording of the law before you can see whether it can be applied in a virtual world. There is an academic debate surrounding this, which is outside the scope of the presentation, but well worth future investigation. That being the discussion between Barlow and Lessig, the separatists and the inclusionists, who argue whether law can be transferred directly into a virtual world setting or whether it should be adapted or whether there should be self-regulation. And I think that discussion bears a lot of merit and, as I say, outside the scope of this presentation, but well worth considering. So as we reach the end of the presentation, I just wanted to point to a few virtual economic crimes, virtual financial crimes that have actually been detected over the past couple of years. Many of you will be aware of these: gold farming, Virtual Money Inc., e-gold case, the Shadow Crew ring, and 2010 EVE Online, the virtual credit crunch and the bank run. All of these are very important when considering virtual economic crime and whether we should have a bespoke set of legal rules to govern the interactions of commerce on a virtual world. If you are interested in hearing more about these, then please contact me and I can send you information. But for now, thank you for listening, and I hope it was interesting and useful to you.